Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Calling Podcast. Today, we're back and dealing with Apos.
Don't call me Apos, okay?
So in this video, I'll be going through his 14th or 15th reason why he left Islam. So yeah, let's take a look.
The Kaaba as a pagan temple. The Kaaba is this cube. Before Islam, according to historical sources, the Kaaba was a small building that belonged to the pagans of Arabia, serving as temple and place of pilgrimage. In it and around it were the idols of those pagans. They also tried to create unity by offering worship for other people like Christians and Jews around them. Maybe that's why Muhammad took it later, destroyed all the idols, and turned it suddenly into Allah's favorite place on earth.
Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I honestly did not want to make a video on this because he has been refuted so many times on this topic.
Alhamdulillah.
On the topic of his whole stupid Kaaba argument. Brother Farid made a video on it. Brother DTTO Will made a video on it. And this is just so stupid. Here he is just committing the fallacy of suppressed evidence, or should I say cherry-picking fallacy. He's just cherry-picking historical event in Islamic history without showing the whole picture and completely ignoring other events that took place, right? So basically he's cherry-picking. He's showing some incidents that happen and completely ignoring other incidents that happen. Yes, it's true that the Prophet ﷺ conquered Mecca, right? But he's completely ignoring everything that happened before then, right? He completely ignored the fact that the Muslims were persecuted. There's a war going on between the Meccans and Prophet ﷺ and his people. He completely ignored the fact that the Muslims were heavily persecuted, right? They couldn't practice their religion. They were kicked out of their land, and they were killed and tortured for their belief. And this guy's acting as if like none of that ever happened. It's almost as if like if you describe the World War II and you say that, Adolf Hitler, he was just minding his own business, then all of a sudden the British and the Allies, they just came and started bombing his country. It's so unfair. Nine! That's not what happened. This is like a cartoon caricature of of what happened in Islamic history. This is just a joke. But regardless, let's continue.
Allah is, according to Islam, the same God of the Jews and the Christians, and Abraham built this cube. Funny.
Why is that funny?
Because according to the stories of the Christians and the Jews, Abraham was very far away from here, and he probably never came here. Also, if the Kaaba was so important to God, if the Kaaba was so important to Allah, and so important to the Christians and the Jews, then why was it never mentioned in Jewish and Christian scriptures? Why did Jews and Christians not even bother about this stupid cube? Why did they not care? If it was the most important place, the most important thing on earth, does it make any sense that Jews and Christians have never cared about that, but suddenly Muhammad does? Fun fact, Kaaba is called Baytullah, which means literally house of God.
This guy's so dumb. I know he has since gotten better, okay? This video is actually pretty old. He has since improved. But back then, it's funny. I remember that, I think it was like 3 years ago, I actually left a comment on his little YouTube video. And I said that, I'm going to make a video on this, but I haven't gotten to it. But finally, I'm getting to it. So basically here he's committing the argument from silence fallacy. Just because the Bible is silent on something, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. The Bible is silent on a lot of things. The Bible is silent on the Ice Age. It doesn't mean that Ice Age didn't happen. The Bible is silent on the Halley's, what it's called? Halley's Comet. Doesn't mean that no one ever saw Halley's Comet. And what type of logic is this? So in case you guys don't know, argument of silence is basically is a type of logical fallacy where you say that something is either true or false based on the silence of something, right? So basically, let's say that the Bible is silent on a certain matter, and that means that it didn't happen. or whatever, right? Or Christians or Jews didn't accept this, right? And this is such a stupid point. I mean, there's so many logical fallacies here that I can like literally write a book on this, okay? He's also committing the appeal to false authority fallacy. I mean, why, since when is Bible reliable in terms of his history? I mean, the Bible claims that like, Moses parted the sea. Do you, Ridvan, believe that? Like, do you believe that Moses parted the sea? So like, why do you accept this then? I mean, who wrote the Bible anyway? Who wrote it? Why is this reliable? I mean, we have no idea who wrote it. On top of that, I mean, no one on planet Earth, like no serious historian will take the Bible as a serious reference point to prove something historically. For example, the Bible makes a historical claim that Jonah was in the belly of a whale for like 14 days or something. Does he believe that? Do you believe that, Ridvan? Then why do you believe this? Appeal to a false authority, in case you guys don't know, is a type of fallacy where you appeal to an authority that is not really an authority on the matter, right? Like, for example, when it comes to history, you wouldn't go to the Bible unless you're like a weird Christian who thinks that is historically reliable. Even Christians don't think that. Then he's also committing the begging the question fallacy. I mean, like, what makes him think that the Bible canon covers the entire history of Abraham? So here the premise that Bible covers the entire history of Abraham is false. It's absolutely false. For like 170 years. And you're telling me the Bible recorded all of that? No, the Bible barely has any information on Abraham. It barely covers like a few days of his life, let alone his entire life of like 170 years. So it's absolutely ridiculous that he thinks that the Bible covers all of the history of Abraham. It doesn't, okay? It has no information, very little information on Jesus. It also has very little information on all the other prophets as well. Like, for example, it only covers like the major events that took place, but it doesn't cover like their daily life. Like, for example, if you compare the life and the information that we have of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu and compare that with like Abraham or Jesus, you say it's day and night. It's day and night. I mean, we even have information regarding what the Prophet ate, like what, who he married, like who his friends were, right? We know everything about him. But if you look at like, these biblical prophets, we know barely anything. So it's such a stupid thing to like, so it makes no sense to like use the Bible and then based on it say that what Prophet Abraham did or didn't do. It's just stupid. As a matter of fact, we know for a fact that there are parts of the biblical canon that are completely missing. For example, there are countless books that are referenced in the canon of the Bible that we have no idea where they went. Okay, these books are completely lost. And I've talked about this before. I'm going to talk about it here again. There's this book called the Book of Wars. This is mentioned in Numbers 21:14. It says, that is why the Book of Wars of the Lord says, Jahab in Suf and in the ravines, the Arnon. Okay, so basically this verse of Numbers is referring to a book called the Book of Wars. Now, some Christian commentators such as Eliot commented on this verse and he said, the Book of Wars of the Lord, nothing is known about this book.
What the hell?
So the Bible commentator himself is saying like, we don't know anything about this book, yet it's being referenced in the Bible. Then pulpit commentary, it says, because the Amorites had wrestled from Moab, all of the north of Arnon, in the book of the wars of the Lord, nothing is known of this book but what appears here. So basically they're admitting, these Christian scholars, they're admitting that we have books in the Bible canon that we know nothing about. Then we have the book of Samuel, Nathan, and God. In Chronicles, 1 Chronicles 29:29, it says, as for the events of King David's reign from the beginning to end, they are written in the records of Samuel the seer, the records of Nathan the prophet, and the records of Gad the seer. Read about this 1 Chronicles 29:29. Another verse, it says, as for other events of Solomon's reign from beginning to end, are they not written in the records of Nathan the prophet, in the prophecy of Ahijah, the Shilonite, and in the version of Iddo, the seer, concerning Jeroboam, son of Nebat, You read about this in 2 Chronicles 9:29. Who the hell are any of these people? And what are these books? Because I've never heard of them. It mentions Nathan the prophet. Who the hell is Nathan the prophet? I mean, if he's a prophet, he sounds like a pretty important person, doesn't he? And then it talks about records of God the seer. But these are book references, by the way. So basically, the Bible authors, they're like, hey, isn't this mentioned in these books or in these 3 books? But they can recall. But the Christians have no idea what these books are, or most of these books are. I mean, who the hell is Samuel the seer? Where is this book? Dear Christians, where are they? Then you have the records of Nathan, Nathan the prophet. They have an entire book on, they had at least, it seems like they had an entire book on a separate prophet that we know nothing about. That book is completely gone. Then you have records of God the seer. That book is also gone. Books are missing. Then you have the books of King of Israel. It says the other events of Jeroboam's reign, his wars and how he ruled, are written in the books of annals of the kings of Israel. You remember this in 1 Kings 14:19. Again, this book is completely lost. Then you have the Acts of Solomon. By the way, this it sounds like pretty important books, right? I mean, it sounds like this is an entire book on Solomon. It says, and the rest of the Acts of Solomon and all that he did and his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the Acts of Solomon? 1 Kings 11:41. There's baffled Bible authors. There's baffled. Hey, isn't this written here? Isn't this written here? But the books are gone. This is hilarious. Again, you can remember this 1 Kings 11:41. Then another book is called Annals of King David. So this is an entire book on King David, who is a pretty important figure in the Bible, by the way. So Job, son of Jeroah, began to count the men, but did not finish God's wrath come on Israel on account of this numbering, and the numbers was not entered in the book of the annals of King David. Again, you can remember this 1 Chronicle 27:24. And now the thing is that even if, like for the sake of argument, I accepted that, you know what, Bible records everything, right? It has, which is ridiculous, just sounds so stupid. But anyway, let's say for the sake of argument, I accepted that. It still wouldn't be plausible that the Bible recorded this particular incident, because the Kaaba, because a lot of time has passed and the Kaaba was destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. For example, there's a hadith which says, narrated Aisha, the prophet, the wife of the prophet, Allah's Messenger said, don't you see that when your people built the Kaaba, they did not build it on all Abraham's foundation? I said, oh Allah's Messenger, why don't you rebuild it on Abraham's foundation? He said, were your people not so close to the period of heathenism, to the period between that they're being Muslims and being infidels, I would do so. You can read about this in Sahih Bukhari 4484. So here, what the Prophet ﷺ is referring to is that the Kaaba was actually rebuilt because it was previously destroyed. So the Quraysh, they actually rebuilt the Kaaba. And the interesting thing is, after I read this hadith, I realized that actually this is not the first time the Kaaba was rebuilt. It was actually rebuilt multiple times. For example, in Islam QA, they actually referenced a book where it says the following. Wahab ibn Munbi said, and is referring to the Kaaba, it was built by Abraham, then rebuilt by Amalekites, then by Jurham, then by Quash ibn Kilab. Its rebuilding by Quraysh is well known. They read about this in Tariq Makkah by Al-Azraqi. You can read about it in this page 161 to 164. There we actually have information and hadith narrations that actually describes that at the time the pagans actually had a picture of Abraham in Kaaba, inside the Kaaba. And what's interesting is that Abraham was actually holding a bunch of arrows, or they're called divination arrows. So basically, at that time, pagan Arabs used to use this type of arrows to draw lots or to predict the future. Now, when the Prophet ﷺ saw this, he was actually very angry because he knew that the Abraham ﷺ didn't do this. Now, what's interesting is that why would the pagans put Prophet Abraham's picture in the Kaaba? I mean, why not Moses? Why not any other prophet? And one possible reason for that is because they also believe that Prophet Abraham also went to Mecca. That could be one reason. For example, it's narrated by Ibn Abbas. When the Prophet ﷺ saw the pictures in Kaaba, he did not enter it till he ordered them to be erased. When he saw the pictures of Abraham and Ishmael carrying the arrows of divination, he said, "May Allah curse them. I curse by Allah. Neither Abraham nor Ishmael practiced divination by arrows." You can read about this in Sahih Bukhari 3352. What's interesting is there's another book. It is mentioned in History of Al-Tabari, volume 2, Prophets and Patriarch. So basically it says that undefined decorations, money, and a pair of ram's horn were recorded to be inside the Kaaba. The pair of ram's horns were said to have belonged to the ram sacrificed by Abraham in place of his son, Ismail. So basically what Tabari, he recorded, and it is also mentioned in another historian's book. I can't remember the exact name here. But so basically, Imam Tabari, what he mentioned is that in the Kaaba, or inside the Kaaba, they supposedly had a ram's horn, which was supposedly belonged to, which was the rams that supposedly was sacrificed by Ibrahim alayhi salam. Okay? Now, this is the interesting part. Why on earth would the pagans put a replica, this is supposedly a replica, of this event inside their temple? Why would they do that? The only reason they might have done that is because they also believed that Abraham actually built the Kaaba, or he actually lived, or he went to Mecca, or he came to Mecca, right? I mean, that's the only reason that makes sense. I mean, otherwise, why would they do that? Now, you could say that, well, maybe they did that because, and I could be wrong here. If there's any student of knowledge who knows more about this stuff, please feel free to correct me. But from what it seems to me, is that a good reason why they might be doing that is that they also believe this, along with the Muslims. Okay? That's a very good logical explanation. Now, some may say, well, they only did that because, they wanted to feel closer to different religions, etc., etc. But I don't think that is good reason or a good argument, because they could have depicted any other prophet. They could have depicted Moses. They could have depicted Adam, right? But they specifically chose Abraham and his son Ishmael as well. And now the thing is, they also had pictures of Jesus, Isa, and Maryam, apparently. But then again, there were Christians there, so that would make sense. But the Abraham part is kind of strange because, they're pagans. And specifically, the what makes these pictures special is because they were holding a kind of cultural icon that was familiar to the pagan Arabs. So which leads me to think that maybe the reason they did that is because, they believe that Abraham actually came to Mecca. Now, based on this, I think we can make a good argument, which is that, premise 1, if the pagans depicted Abraham alayhi salam with pagan practices, it indicates his association with the Kaaba. Premise 2, the pagans did depict Abraham alayhi salam with pagan practices such as drawing arrows and lots. Conclusion. Therefore, it indicates his association with the Kaaba. So basically, what this argument, I think we can make a very strong and good argument, which shows that if the pagans depict Ibrahim alayhi salam in a way that is very closer to their own practice, this indicates that he has an association with Kaaba and Mecca. Otherwise, this just doesn't make sense. And we see that they did do that, because, he was drawn, showing that he was drawing lots, right? Which I think is a very good reason to think that it's possible, as a matter of fact, it's very logical, that he actually went to that place, right? He actually went there and he built the Kaaba, as the Muslims believed. You don't even have to be a Muslim to accept this argument. I think this is a very good argument, because you have two options, right? You have the Jewish and Christian sources, and you have the Muslim sources. Now, our sources are based on testimonies that we can verify, we can check, right? And these are not some random people writing random things. These are actual people we know about. We have their biography, we have their history. And this is just not one person. Multiple different people all saw this. And on the other hand, you have a bunch of books written by people you know nothing about. And we have no idea who wrote them. Bunch of their books are missing. So which would you rather pick? Would you rather pick a source of information where we have the manuscript, we have the oral chain, both of which we can use to verify the sources, and it was seen by multiple different eyewitnesses, or something where we know nothing about the eyewitnesses, we have a bunch of their books missing, and it's just not reliable. and we have no like external source to prove that anyway. I think I would go with the Muslim sources. If I was a logical person, even if I was not a Muslim, that's the source I would go with, because that's the one that makes sense. If you guys like the video, then please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. And please, if you guys can, support me on Patreon, and also become a member of this channel if you guys can. The link is in the description, inshallah. And if you guys want to see more video on APOS, you'll see them on the end screen, inshallah. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.